Florida State at Oklahoma. This is our game of the week, which means we're going to go in depth and really break this game down. Plus, it's Marco's best bet free pick of the week. So, Marco, what should the bettors be looking at in this game?
This is a game, public perception, and I'm going to take advantage of the public perception where we're going to get line value, and I'll explain that as we get into it.
All right, so let's talk about it. On the Oklahoma side, what's the public perception?
Oklahoma side is they're looking at last week and they're judging from one.
They, when you say they're looking, the
John
public.
Q. Public.
Johnny Q.
Johnny Q's looking at this game, and all they see is Oklahoma was a huge favorite last week, and they only won 31-24 over Utah State. They're going to look on the flip side at Florida State, the first game for Jimbo Fisher at Florida State, and they won 59-0. So knee-jerk reaction is Oklahoma's overrated, and Florida State's better than people thought.
This follows from last year. I mean, this is a team that had 6 wins last year, but had 3 of the top 5 draft choices or some variation of that. So they've underperformed now, and they've underperformed in the biggest games, losing a number of BCS championship games in recent memory. So in general, this is affirming last week's underperformance is affirming people's doubts about Oklahoma in your mind.
Right, which creates for me as a sharp bettor, I see value because the line's coming down because of that. The public wants the dog. They think Florida State's live, and I just feel that they're not. I feel that Florida State, you can't compare playing Samford and winning 59-0, that's a true tell of what this team has to offer this year.
All right, so now we're talking about Miami, and you're saying you think they're overrated.
Florida State, you mean?
Oh, we were just at the Ohio State Miami game. So Florida State overrated.
Absolutely. And when we talked about this in one of our videos last week, you can rest assured that last week, whenever Bob Stoops was preparing for Utah State, a lot of the practices, they were thinking about the next week of playing Florida State as well.
That's fine, but that's something that's going to be assumed in the line to some degree. And, I mean, they gave up 341 passing yards. I think this goes above and beyond, not covering the point spread. I mean, it seemed like the case could be made they could have lost the game. So I'm not questioning your pick, but let's not be too – that's the thing people forget. The lines makers aren't dumb. Most lines are correct, and the ones that are incorrect are off by 3 points, 4 points at the most. That's all. You give me 3 points, I'll let you pick all day with no juice, and I'll own everything you have soon enough. So we're talking field goals here, and I'm not saying you're wrong, but let's not just wave our hands and dismiss this Oklahoma. I mean, is this Oklahoma team, they did have to disappoint you to some degree last week, right? You just think there's an overreaction.
I think there's an overreaction, and what I like from a handicapping standpoint, and this is something when me and you talk, we disagree about, and I talk about focus and intensity levels. And again, we're going to use this term loosely, I'm still putting Oklahoma in the category of a good team. When good teams underperform, you're always going to get their best effort the next week because they're totally focused, because the players, it was a wake-up call. They almost lost to Utah State. The coaches are going to push them hard in practice all week, and it gives them the right to. The coach can say, you guys are lackadaisical. You're not focused. So they're going to drill all that. You're going to get that best week of preparation. Go back to Chuck Noll, the Pittsburgh Steelers. Every time they had a bad game, sloppy, what did you always hear? We're going back to basics, and that's what it's about.
You might have heard that. Unfortunately, most of the listeners weren't born, but go ahead.
If you listen to this guy, I'm 105 years old. I'm the oldest handicapper in the business.
You got massive experience, and people are paying for the massive experience. Here's my point, though. I would agree with you if you had a piece of paper and you said, okay, on a scale of 1 to 10, what is this team's motivation, focus level coming in the game? I agree with you that if it was going to be a 7, but the poor performance pushes it up to a 10, you've just gained something. But a Florida State Oklahoma type game, my point is it's going to be almost at 10 regardless, and the incremental gain of that poor performance is less. But that's just a fundamental disagreement that we have about handicapping. I would tend to agree with you if I was a watcher, because this is what you do as well as anyone in the world. So, okay, so let's dig a little deeper here. I'm going to tell you some concerns, because I'm actually thinking I'm going to want to bet Florida State here with you to save the juice. All right, Oklahoma, defensive tackle, Taylor, their only real stud coming back, hurt himself in the bowl game, didn't play in the first game. He's probable coming in this game, but clearly first game back, doubt he's at 100%. So assuming that's the case, D-line, the studs on the D-line are something that the John Q. public, as you say, do not properly take into account. Are you overlooking that?
I'm not as concerned on the D-line as I would be on the O-line.
Okay. But that's what's interesting. I was listening to Chad Millman, our friend's podcast at ESPN, and he was talking about, he had a guy on there, Alan Boston, who he wrote a book about. He's a pretty serious handicapper. He said if the O-line's important, then that's because they're stopping the D-line. So the D-line has to be equally as important. And I think that's a good point, is there is a bias towards the O-line being more important. I think both are equally important, though I would say that continuity and working together and all those early season factors may be less important on the D-line, but the D-line and O-line are of equal importance when it comes to ultimate performance. Would you agree with that?
We'll agree with that.
Okay. Next question, playing devil's advocate. This OU team's underperformed, as I said, a little bit. Last year, I don't care about a few injuries. You look at that draft, what were they 6-6 before the bowl? I mean, this is a team that was middle of the pack at best with an all-star team of players. What's going on? I mean, at some point, there's got to be a meaning to this underperformance. Is it something you don't think is true, or you're overlooking in this case?
There's no question that in the last few years, Oklahoma has not performed when it's got to the big games. I can't argue that fact. But I'm still looking at a situation where I'm looking at the current market, and I'm looking at people are overreacting to the market of Oklahoma, and really, Florida State didn't have a good team last year. And to get all excited in the first game with Jimbo Fisher because they ran over Samford,
you're making a good point. This is, we talked about this last week. First-year coaches increase expectation and typically underperform. I agree with you there. Last point, and first I'll make a quick point for Oklahoma, one quick stat. Oklahoma is 11 out of 14 ATS in September. So they do typically start fast, though, last week withstanding. All right, here's the little inside tidbit that I think is the game changer that I'm going to put some money on. All right, Florida State's new defensive coordinator, Mark Stoops, is the brother of Bob Stoops. So what you have is the brother, and this is back to what we talked about in the West Virginia game, where he has though he's never coached on the OU staff, he has intimate knowledge of the way Bob does things. Now that seems to be a big advantage of Florida State. How is that something you accounted for, and do you see it? Well, I guess the question is, all other things equal, do you see that as a disadvantage for Oklahoma?
That would be the one thing that I would give as a disadvantage to Oklahoma, but it's not enough to swing me off of the play.
All right, give us your official prediction.
I have Oklahoma winning 37-24. I think you're going to see offense, because we definitely saw that both teams, can score. Oklahoma, if they did give up that kind of passing yardage last week to Utah State, if I'm Florida State, I'm going to try to attack that secondary a little bit. That's one way they can stay in this ball game. But when it's all said and done, I think Oklahoma State pulls away in the second half. I'm making it my game of the week, and I've got Oklahoma 37-24.
Okay, Dustin, our producer, go to the head-to-head shot now. You ready? All right. So we're going to have our first bet of the 2010 season.
We're taking the rubber bands out?
We're taking the rubber bands out. I'll let you choose. We can put a nickel on it, Or if we put a nickel, I'm going to go get a nickel somewhere else. I'm playing a dime on this. If you want the dime, that's great. If you want the nickel, that's fine. But I'm taking Florida State here.
Well, being that I've already got some money down on the game, I'll go with a nickel with you, and I've already bet the game, so I got Oklahoma.
You look nervous.
I'm not nervous. This is one of our friends.
You had a losing year against me last year. It's been the talk in the forum.
Has that been the talk in the forum? I must have missed that thread. You have to send me the link after you start it.
All right, so we'll use the official line from this video. Okay, last thing. Now each week with our game of the week, we're also going to give a $10 coupon for pregamepros.com, and each week it will be in this one video that we're going even deeper into the handicap. So for this first week of NFL, why don't you hit us?
It's the kickoff of the NFL, so we're going to make the coupon kickoff 10. All one word, the word kickoff and the number 10. Just enter that coupon code when you check out, and you'll get $10 off any package that you want. And unfortunately for RJ, if the package only costs $10, he gets 0.
And then no more videos. All right, now it's your turn to get involved and continue the conversation in the comment section with Marco and I. And next up, we're going to be digging into 3 NFL games for this weekend.